So next in our agenda is a panel discussion, Wonder Women in FinTech, Spearheading FinTech Innovation and Implementation. I invite the panel moderator, Gaia Lamperti, Global Reporter, IBS Intelligence, to take over and introduce all the speakers inside. Over to you, Ms. Gaia.
Hello, thank you very much. Fantastic. So I'm really excited to be moderating a panel on Wonder Women in FinTech. And to do so, we are delighted to have on the panel with us 3 women who are really Wonder Women in the sector. So it's an honor to introduce Sonia Barlow, founder and CEO at LMF Network, Nadia Edwards-Dusty, Chief Customer Officer at Harrington Star Group, and Amber Skinner-Josephson, Chief Experience Officer at EPO. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It's great to have you here. And before we kick off with the panel discussion, I'd love for all of you to introduce yourself and maybe more specifically what you personally and your organization is doing to help women in FinTech to thrive and reach success. Sonia, do you want to start?
Yeah, cool. So hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Barlow. Really simply, I run the LMF Network, aka Like-Minded Females, and we are a social enterprise and careers platform. Our new campaign is to build the confidence and careers of 25,000 people by 2025. And we have 2 parts to our business. One is we are a consultancy, so we support businesses in being more diverse, inclusive, and just with business strategy generally. And our second is our community platform, where we build the confidence and careers through mentoring, meaningful conversations, and masterclasses. Super exciting. In the last 3 years, we've actually upskilled shy of 20,000 people, launched the UK's largest mentoring program, so mentored 1,000 people last year with a 98% success rate, and also have generally grown to a social community following of over 50,000. Outside of that, I'm a BBC radio presenter, a best-selling author of Unprepared to Entrepreneur, and a big advocate that we just need to encourage women in the workspace to be more curious, build their confidence, and empower them to launch their careers and not just be hired for jobs.
Fantastic, sounds great. I see that Nadia is clapping. Nadia, you want to go next?
Thank you. Can I just say, what a fantastic panel. I am super excited for the 3 of us to be talking to you today. Like really, really over the moon. So let me just say a little bit about me. So I am the Chief Customer Officer of Harrington Star. We are a recruitment agency. We place technology and sales staff into the financial services sector. So you can imagine FinTech is a huge part of what we focus on. And I have been nothing less than obsessed with trying to help this industry become more inclusive. And, you know, I don't want to sound patronizing there, you know, recruiters helping the entire industry to become better, but I'll tell you, you know, why I'm obsessed with this and a bit of the work that I'm doing, because so many businesses now come to me and say, hey, we want to have a more inclusive workforce. We want you to help us attack our gender imbalance. And, you know, there's a gross gender imbalance within the industry. And, you know, what do they see from a recruitment partner? CVs. And I'm sorry, but it's much, much more than that. You know, just as Sonia alluded to there, it's not about someone's next job. It's about someone being able to thrive in the industry. And actually, in many cases, just be given a level playing field so that they then can thrive. And so the sort of work I do is to take recruitment as a responsibility and really get people to visualize that this is not a revolving door. There's no point me bringing people in if they're then going to leave. How do we create environments where women, where people from diverse backgrounds, or if you want to call it diverse backgrounds, are really celebrated and included and feel safe and given, as I say, a level playing field, nothing more, just level, and fairness is what we're looking for, to be able to really build upon their careers. So the work that I do isn't just about attracting talent to this space. It's about working with the companies on how do we keep, invest, nurture, support preserve this talent within this space. This is what I get so excited about, and I've done a lot of different things to be able to support that. So similarly to Sonia, I run a podcast series called FinTech with Nadia, the DEI discussions. I've interviewed Sonia on it. Amber, I am after you next. But you know, I've interviewed over 300 individuals across the financial services space, talking about how do we make this industry more inclusive? How do we give a level playing field? How do we encourage people of all backgrounds, of all different demographics to thrive here? That podcast series I then turned into a book called FinTech Women Walk the Talk. And it really shows blueprints of what you can do and what everyone can do. So I hope we can, you know, discuss some of that today. But, you know, similarly to Sonia, I'm running events, consulting, careers fairs, webinars, you know, you name it. We have all got to play our part to drive a better industry for people to thrive in. So super excited about today's conversation, and thank you so much for having me.
We are as well. Thank you, Nadia. Definitely a lot going on. And Amber, on to you.
Sure. Like Sonia and Nadia, I'm super happy to be here. I'm really excited to continue this conversation. It's one that's popped up more and more frequently. And Nadia, I'm really excited to hear everything that you're doing on the recruitment side. I would love to bring you into, you know, I'm in-house, linking up with some things that you're doing to make sure that we're making sure the conversation is consistent from end to end. So really excited to hear what you're doing. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at a digital receipts fintech called EPOP, or Electronic Proof of Purchase. Prior to this, I was CEO of a consumer lending and alternative credit scoring fintech based here in London. I'm sitting in London. Before that, I was the global head of marketing and communications at Swift. So taking care of things like analyst relations, marketing across the board, commercial marketing, communications, a lot of go-to-market across all 12 of Swift's business lines. So as you can tell, I've been in marketing communications, particularly growth marketing for quite a while. I started my life, seems like a long time ago, but I started my life as a newspaper journalist and have been in the corporate comms and marketing space since then, more recently into general management. So helping women, I never get tired of talking about this particular topic. I hope that one day within my lifetime, this is going to become just a non sequitur, you know, a topic that we don't really need to have panels about and conferences and networks specifically about helping women, because it will just be something that happens naturally. In my company that I'm at right now, we're a small outfit, so we're about 10 employees. But the way that we've conceived of the workplace is inherently about moving young people, especially women, into fintech. And this goes beyond you know, building a pipe of candidates who already have experience, but reaching into folks that haven't left university yet, even, you know, folks who are as young as 16 years old, bringing them into, giving them exposure, because that's what we found is something that's really lacking, especially when it comes to women entering fintech, which is an inherently technical space. So reaching all the way back to teenagers and adolescents to just give them access to be able to come in, do a stint, maybe an internship, and see with their eyes and feel experience with their day-to-day, what does this mean actually? From the outside looking in, fintech, especially if you read the news and that's your only entry point, you know, it seems like very grand ideas that, you know, one after another that are reported on in the media. And that's kind of what fintech is. It's a lot of technical stuff, a lot of engineering, a lot of financial mathematics, just technical fields, a lot of big ideas that turn into big unicorns, et cetera. And then what is the in between where the rubber meets the road? So what is my part? How could I potentially enter into a fintech career? And then there's that ever-present question of, how do I get, they're asking me for experience. How do I get experience if I don't have experience? And where do, you know, this kind of chicken and egg, how do I start this? So we've really reached back into building that pipe of female talent and diverse talent that starts with before people even leave school. So that's one thing that we're doing within my organization. And personally on my side, I'm a big believer that when you're trying to change conversations, when you want to enact a change, everybody at every level has a part to play. In my particular life and career, I've really focused on structure, guidance, and opportunity, especially for young women. And where I come from in the marketing space, marketing communication space, there's no dearth of young women. If you get to the top of the marketing communications pyramid in terms of leadership, that it's a little bit thinner, which is an interesting phenomenon. And when I say interesting, I mean disappointing phenomenon. So in my career, trying to structure a workplace, a team, a function, a department around building a diverse incoming and promotion of people. This particular conference we're talking about gender, but I could just as easily talk about ethnic or cultural diversity. So building a structure of excellence and success across the board. Guidance, because I'm a big believer in mentorship, and that doesn't have to be gender specific, but the power of mentorship, especially when the people are coming into a role, coming into a company, coming into an industry or a function, and not seeing immediately people who look like them, being able to have open and honest conversation that often starts with people at the top being willing to say, hey, let me give you access or even just some time. So I'm a big believer in guidance, which all translates to opportunity. So like everybody on this panel, I could probably just talk exclusively myself about my own experience for about 2 hours. So let me be a little bit quiet and we can get on with the questions.
Fascinating. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, all of you. And, as you were speaking, very passionate about what you did, it was clear, it emerged that inclusion and gender equality in the fintech industry is still a work in progress. And we all hope that we didn't have to have these panels and these conversations, but it's still very needed. So maybe we could start by identifying what are some of the challenges and the roadblocks for women, young women, especially who want to enter this space. So maybe Sonia, I was going to ask this to you, especially because you have the whole community around you. Maybe what are some of the shared experiences that women have faced when trying to enter the space or try to climb the corporate ladder and cover those higher position of power that Amber was mentioning. So what have been the challenges so far?
Yeah, I think it's such a great question. Thank you for asking. So contextually, I think it's really important to share my own story. So in 2018, I started a brunch club called LMF Network because I was in a space where I didn't feel like I had the right conversations around career and confidence and how to kind of grow up that corporate ladder. And you don't want to have it with your managers because actually you want to talk about your managers because often they are the roadblockers. So you don't want to go to them to be like, hey, you're a roadblock and now let's talk about it together. And I think, what Amber suggested about representation, it really did matter. But I have to admit that when I went into work in 2015, I didn't know that I was a woman or a woman in tech or a brown woman in tech or all these like other funky labels that I have now. I was just a graduate who had a degree, who worked damn hard and wanted to get into the workspace. And so you enter the workspace and you're like, I'm an adult, I've made it. Wow, I can like go and do it. And the workspace is just like high school politics, it's you're battling a spectrum of problems that you didn't even know existed because no one really highlighted that, be that in your degree or be that in the interview rounds. So when I entered the workspace, the first thing that I remember now in hindsight is I completely became an imposter. So that's challenge number one, right? Is imposter syndrome. Now, I have to admit that I think recently there's a lot that associates women with imposter syndrome. So we can get onto that in a second. But what I realized back then was I went into work in 2015, deleted all my social media and just went to work early, like 2 hours early, stayed 2 hours late, worked really hard, did extra work, on the weekends worked, and then got really frustrated because I didn't have any sense of self. So there's two things there. There's the fact that you go into a workspace that you don't think is created for you or made for you and you don't have the right support around you. And the second is the working really hard and losing your identity. Because when you work, you're just a byproduct of that. You're another number, right? And then between my first and second role, I guess when I realized that I wasn't valued at the company, I wanted them to fight for me. And that's where Nadia's point comes in about retention. It's just not about like attracting great talent. Great talent is there. So anyone who tells me there isn't, they're not looking hard enough or they're not looking in the right places. It's about retention. I know I'm an ideal candidate. I am that brown woman in tech that everyone's trying to hire. I don't want to work for you. So between my first and second role, I negotiated a 20K pay rise because I had allies in the back being like, go and ask for more money. So there's two things there. One is companies aren't ready to fight for the diversity or the inclusive people that they are wanting, or, you know, check boxing or tick boxing. And the second is that companies are willing to pay women and women of color 20 grand less for the same role. If it wasn't up to me to go and fight for that, or at least to ask for that money, they would have been like, yeah, cool, you can have that role. So no one on the other side is trying to kind of back you. So when I started Like Minded Females in 2018, it was just to get out my own loneliness and my own funk and my own sense of who the hell am I, because I'm just another employee in another corporate and I don't really understand who Sonia is anymore. And so to answer your question, right, there's a lack of identity, there's a lack of opportunity, but often it's not the lack of opportunity, it's the lack of accessibility that's coming from a company standpoint as to how you can enter, how you can progress, but how you can retain. And as a young woman, you know, I'm thinking about motherhood. And I know, you know, as an example, I know Nadia's kids, like she's able to build her life with motherhood, but you see all these businesses who aren't able to support women growing up the ladder when they bring families into the, you know, into the system. So you're sitting there thinking, is it me or is it them? We've done research last year from the LMF networking community, and we found the 3 reasons as to why I would say women and minoritized groups aren't kind of comfortable in progressing in their jobs or in the workspace. Is 1, the lack of confidence that they have generally. 2, the lack of career knowledge that they have. A great example being, you're saying the word FinTech, which is great if you know what FinTech is. But if you don't know what FinTech is, you're like, what does that mean? Account manager. If you don't know what an account manager is, you're like, oh, it's something to do with accounting, because that's the association. We haven't actually broken down the skills and the day-to-days and the requirements required for the roles. We've just expected that these job titles are going to be good enough to bring them into the system. The job descriptions aren't inclusive. They don't have salary ranges. They don't have their EDI kind of summaries. And then you're also not adapting them for culture. And the third thing we found was that if you don't have confidence, you don't have career knowledge, at the end of the day, you don't have community. And women especially are longing for that sense of community. And when I say women, I mean anyone who is minoritized, because women are not a minority. We're actually 51% of the world, right? So to be a minority when you're the majority actually makes no sense to me anymore. And it's anyone who's put in that bucket or that group. And fundamentally, the systems, the structures aren't created for us. They're not ready for us. And if they are ready for us, we have to think about status quo biases, which are, why will you change something if everything is happening the way it is and you're successful? Now, if your business is making money and you are profitable and you are claiming revenues, but the world is saying you need to be more inclusive, with all due respect, the people at the top are like, we're at the table, we're making money, nothing's really happening, we don't have that much of a churn rate, and we're still getting partners. What is their incentive to become more inclusive? Apart from the fact that it increases your profits by 23%, it's also an investment that they're not ready to make because we're not challenging them enough. And I always take a step back and I say, if you want fundamental change, then as consumers, we need to change our habits. You need to limit the people that you are interacting with. It's not cancel culture, it's accountability culture. It's about making sure that you are consuming healthy habits, be that social media individuals, be that followers, be that companies that you're embracing, be that where your purchasing power is going, so that you can tell them, hey, we need this kind of like nonsense to stop. And then lastly, as a first generation at university, we need to do better to go into the education system and to inform and educate young individuals on exactly what is happening in the future, what the trends are, and how their skills are going to be relevant, not job titles. When I was at university in 2014, there was no such thing as a chief meme officer or the metaverse or like Web3 or even social media managers and assistants, right? It was fairly new. And yet we were so fixated on these job titles. But if someone said, actually, the skills you need for this are communication, leadership, listening, social media, and problem solving, you're like, actually, I can do a lot more than I thought I could. And so this is far more accessible for me and the opportunities for that. So that's a lot of the work we do, right? We're launching this careers platform to support anyone and everyone globally from an accessible and tech standpoint, find their community, build their careers, but most importantly, build their confidence so they can stand up for themselves and speak up where relevant. We provide a mentoring program it's a reverse mentoring program, so anyone and everyone can upskill and learn from one another, but also because representation does matter. And often representation isn't just about color or gender or ethnicity. It's someone who has a similar same or shared experience as you and can tell you how to get out the funk. And we're having conversations like this, you know, as a CEO and founder, do I know what I'm doing most of the time? Absolutely not. Actually, most of the time I don't. But I go and ask people, I stay curious, and I still show up to the spaces to prove that socially, everything is aesthetically pleasing, but nothing is actually perfect. So we need to stop being like, it needs to be perfect. We need to encourage progression, and we need to just celebrate the fact that people have tried. If you failed, that means you've tried, and you know, you're braver than most people out there, because what we're fearing is the failure. And so people don't even give things a go. But I appreciate I can talk about this for days, and I can feel the extra passion in my voice now. So I'm just going to take a step back and invite my colleagues onto the discussion as well.
Great points. Thank you, Sonia, also for sharing your experience. And I truly think what you and your platform are doing is fantastic. But if we look at what fintech companies themselves can do to progress the conversation, and we talk about maybe operational excellence. So what are the principles and the tools that these companies can implement within the organization to, as you rightly mentioned, not only create female talent, but nurture it? And I would like to ask this to Amber, because I know you've been working with several tech companies, you've been living abroad, so maybe you can share your experience and a few different points of view from the sort of companies you've been working with.
Sure, I would be happy to. And I actually want to bring up, I mean, Sonia, everything that you said was so pertinent. And really, I can validate through a lot of my experience. I was not in school when you are. I'm X number of years older than you, but you know, not a lot has moved over the past X number of years, which is unfortunate to say, but I share a lot of your experience. I would say one of the big questions that you asked was what makes these companies move, because they're companies. So what makes them move? And you brought up the you know, and these are not new stats. We know this. These are things that have been talked about, and you know, lots of panels and lots of headlines about how diverse workforces perform better, and what in the work world do we mean by perform better? Earn better, higher revenues. I just grabbed a stat at a conference that I was at last week, 2 weeks ago. For every $1 of investment raised, startups with at least one female founder produce 78 cents in revenue, compared to 31 cents generated by all male-run startups. So I work in the world of startups, and in my career now at this stage, I'm very purposeful about the founders and the folks that I do choose to spend my time working with, and a lot of them are either female founder led startups, or ethnic minority or cultural minority led startups founders. So that's how I spend my time professionally these days. And when we talk about operational excellence, whether it's a big company or a small company, we still need to come back to this. And that's where I start. Why do we need to remind ourselves that you know, operational excellence is the thing that wins the race? In startups, big ideas are amazing, and they really push the envelope forward. We talk about a lot of visionary founders, people who have, you know, products and companies and services that have changed the face of consumerism, and they get a lot of media coverage. But like I said or alluded to earlier, the winners and losers in this fintech sector, especially the startup sector, are determined by their ability to execute. So operational efficiency and customer excellence. That's the differentiator very, very often. It's not the big idea, it's ability to execute. And what does this have to do with women? Well, a lot to do with women. I read that stat from BCG that just said, you know, female founders are really good at doing this. You know, that's one thing. Gender diversity delivers higher returns and lower risk. We know this already. There's been a conversation for a long time, since 2008, we had the financial crisis, about how, you know, risk profiles, traders, portfolio managers, etc. Gender diversity. There's a whole examination around this. How does that translate into fintech in the world of startups? Well, it's kind of the same thing. A more diverse workforce, and right now we're talking about gender diversity, leads to better performance. So after I look at operational excellence, what is the point? What is the need? Then I think, again, another headline that we're all thinking about, or all talking about, especially in fintech, why are female founders and female-led companies not just exploding all over the place? So Sonia, you are a female founder. You have your own company. Well, that's because VC dollars are not going to female founders. Last year, 5, not even 6% of VC firms in the US were women-led. So I know there's been a huge improvement. When you start with a small number, even incremental change seems like 100% improvement year over year, but we're still at a very small percentage of VC and angel investors who are women, and an even smaller percentage of folks who are investing in female-led startups. So when we talk about the kind of the larger issue of operational excellence, I really like to point out and have for a long time, and will continue to point out the need to have women in the mix, and that just not just at the top, not just kind of entry-level pipe. We talked about making sure that your entry pipe is diverse, but all the way through the middle. So principles and tools. When I go back to what I said initially in the intro, a lot of this is around nurturing and making sure that all employees are successful. And both Sonia and Nadia talked about, once it's not just hiring, right? You can do blind hiring, you can do quotas, the dreaded Q word. There's lots of things that you can do to make sure that your hiring is diverse. But what happens when they get in there? So if your organization, if and it's not difficult to find tools or metrics or even proxies to measure this, if your organization is set up to make sure that a particular type of demographic is successful, white males, for example, that's not cutting it then. Something needs to be retooled then. So you can get folks in, are they staying? And not only are they staying, are they moving up? Are they moving around? Are they able to expand their careers? Do they feel like they're a success, or do you have a high churn rate of these folks? So again, Nadia, I think could probably off the top of her head list about 5 different metrics that indicate whether this is the case or not. And if it's not the case for your organization, it needs to be rethought and retooled. There are lots of different people out there who can help sit down and say, this is exactly what you need to look at. And again, Sonia, back to your point, if your company is profitable and you're thinking, who cares? Well, in the world of work, which is on everybody's mind right now, especially since COVID, especially since this great resignation, especially since the economy seems to be on the brink of tanking, everybody's thinking about what is the world of work going to be tomorrow? Who are the candidates? Everybody's trying to hire tech talent, and it's just a nightmare right now. So everybody's thinking about what is the workforce looking like for tomorrow, not just for like working parents, things like this, but folks who are not going to be parents, women who are at every stage of their careers. What does that look like? And making sure that people can come in, be successful, grow their careers, and want to stay and contribute in a way that really they're able to give all of their skills. You're able to tap into all of their capabilities and make sure that you're extracting that and leveraging that as an employer is really, really important. Yeah, I could probably continue. I have now questions for both of these ladies on the panel myself, other than the questions that were expressed. So I'm going to leave those until the end. But yeah, that's what I think.
Keep them there because I'm curious as well. I want to hear them. I was just thinking that probably Nadia has a lot that she can add to this point, and in particular with your work, you often in your campaigning, the podcast, the book you recently wrote, you often talk about making women more visible. Like this is the sort of key actionable verb that you use to address the whole day conversation. So maybe you could expand on who are the key stakeholders who need to sort of like empower women and make them more visible, and as well as the actionable steps to get there finally.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I love this question, and I think it couldn't be a better order. Like, I think it's excellent that we've done it in this order, because we have covered so much in such a short amount of time, but these are all the things that we need to be covering, because one thing I always say to anybody that I work with, that we're not going to get to an inclusive working environment with one silver bullet. There are many, many things that we need to be looking at and many things that we need to be considering. And, you know, a long time ago, I began to subscribe to, I hashtag it everywhere. It's the title of my book. I use this phrase, walk the talk, because how long have we been talking about this? And look, both of you, Sonia and Amber, gave some great stats. And you said the stats and said, look, we know this. Why haven't we changed? And, you know, this is why conversations like this are so important, because we have to be at least talking the talk to help more people walk the talk. And, you know, my whole belief in walking the talk is that it is everybody's responsibility to amplify, everybody's responsibility to celebrate achievements. The gender imbalance is not just a female only issue. It's all genders, it's everybody, because it's for the good of, it's the good of society, the good of our businesses. And, you know, when Sonia said the 23% stat, when we looked at what you said, Amber, about to $1.78 and 30 something cents, like, wow, I mean, the money people in this world are listening to this, but why are we still not making this strive for change? And my total belief is that as human beings, because it seems like such a huge task we are undertaking to try and have gender equality in our workplaces and society, because it is so entrenched in history and so entrenched in the history of technology. Like, we don't need to go into the dire stats, the dire experiences, the bro culture, the misogyny that technology has, the history of technology and gaming. We don't need to go into the history of the financial services. I mean, I quote in my book, as soon as only 1974, one of the questions on an application form to one of the big banks, I put it in the book, so I'll say it now, to Merrill Lynch, was actually, what should you notice first about a woman? What she says or how she looks. That was on the application form to get into a bank in 1974. You know, we're still talking about a woman's right to choose for her body in this day and age. You know, there are so many issues that are going to impact gender equality in the workplace. And I really think the reason why we struggle so much is because this is all consuming. It is all encompassing. I am very privileged at the minute that I have two very young children, a boy who's about to turn 1, a girl who's just turned 2. And the difference in how people speak to these children, this is why. And I just wanted to start with the why. You know, we all, and these aren't bad people talking to my kids. They're lovely people. They don't, you know, even me, I tell her she's beautiful and he's strong. And I fight for gender equality. And I think that this is why I chose this hashtag, walk the talk. And by choosing this hashtag and by choosing that as the title of my book, I want to bring everybody into the conversation and into the action. Too many people say inclusion is an over there problem for somebody else to fix. Oh, she will fix it in HR, or oh, it's up to the CEO. No, it's up to everybody in every instance, at every walk of life. We all need to be walking the talk for inclusion, which will result, as we've seen with those stats and those figures, will result in the good of society, the workplace, your business, your career, your personal life, your home life. Whatever situation you're in. So I have to start there with walk the talk. I have to start there because when I do my podcast, it did start off as the Women of FinTech. That was my first stream of podcasts. And then I realized, why am I talking to only women about a gender problem? Like, I've fallen into the trap. So I then began my next series, The Humans of FinTech, and these all run concurrently. I then embarked on my own maternity journey, and I thought, how am I going to cope with, you know, my career and babies? So I began the maternity and paternity stories of FinTech. During the pandemic, I wanted people to think about their talent, how to nurture and support their talent, whoever their talent may be. And so I added on the Talent Surgery podcast series. And all of these are just all encompassing, because that's what inclusion is about. And there are so many stories that we need to be celebrating of how people have overcome challenges, because one thing that is my personality is action. Let's not talk about it, let's do something. But also, people say I often, put my horns on and I run into a problem because I'm scared of it. So I'm going to run into it and just get involved in it and fix it. And my watch is talking to us. I think it's so important that with these podcasts, we are unveiling the truth of the challenge and then saying, what can we do to fix it? So when you say, who are the stakeholders, who are the people? I honestly, that's my sort of intro to it. I honestly believe anyone and everyone has a story to tell and share. And that story, we need to acknowledge it and listen to it. And one of the things I was thinking about in particular when Sonia was speaking was about when she was talking about confidence, women's confidence. That is a societal issue. And I look at it now as myself as a leader within this business, and I'm confident in my ability to lead and to manage. I am not confident in the perception that other people have of me as a woman in leadership. And I think that's a really important thing to say, because if I'm feeling that, having worked within my industry of recruitment into the financial services space for 19 years now, I could give you my whole accolade of achievements, and I'm still worried about confidence. This is a system problem rather than a me as a woman not confident problem. I'm confident in me, I'm just not confident in you. And I think that's what we need to really work on. How do we get these environments? So, when we all say we need better support, well, actually that support means we need better advocacy. We need to be heard in exactly the same way other people are heard. Let me give an explanation. Every woman will nod and smile, any woman, every woman, and we can all trial this later on. Nod and smile when you say, hey, have you ever been in a meeting and you've put forward an idea and everyone's moved on? A man who sat next to you repeats your idea in his phraseology and everyone's suddenly, well done, fantastic idea. That's what we're implementing. And by the way, next promotion round, we're going to remember his wonderful idea. And when people talk to everybody else in the business and say, who do you think should be getting a pay rise? Oh, him, because he comes up with all the good ideas. And I know I'm being a bit facetious with this, but one of the key parts of the book and what I've learned from all my podcasts is the absolute importance of the recognition and attribution of credit being correct. And right now, the status quo is that women are not given the recognition that they deserve. Women are not attributed the credit that they deserve. Therefore, when it comes to promotion rounds and pay rise rounds, there is a perceptional, it's incorrect, the perception of women within the workplace. So when we talk about how important this is, I actually want to flip the narrative, because I think, look, all the mentoring that Amber and Sonia spoke about, all the upskilling, all the talking about talent and what we can do with it. I think there's so much talent out there. What can we do as organizations to really be ripe and ready to take on that talent and nurture it in the way that it needs to be nurtured? And that begins at recognition, because people communicate in different ways. And I've done so much research into gendered language. I speak emotively. My CEO, who I do a weekly podcast with, he speaks very factually. His facts often get repeated on social media. My emotions or the passion in my voice doesn't. So I need to work harder, I know that, at being able to be repeated more, but it's the way the psyche works. And I think that when it comes to these podcasts that I'm doing, I'm giving as much visibility as I can. And I'm going for it again and again and again, repetition, repetition, repetition. I read a long time ago that people can only take in 25% of what you say. So you better say it 4 different times and in 4 different ways, if you've got any hope of being really listened to. And that is my philosophy on what I'm doing to celebrate the great, I always call them the great, the wonderful, the powerful women in FinTech, but also the allies. And we've mentioned allies and we've mentioned advocates. And I think to really simplify my answer, we've got to look at, how do we celebrate achievements? Know them, know what you own and what is yours. What have you achieved? Make sure we log that. Make sure we're telling people Me, culturally, my cultural background, to tell you my achievements, notice how I said I could list off my achievements, but I'd rather not. Why am I like that? Because that is my cultural background, how I was brought up. I'm sure if I had a brother, which I don't, he would be very happy to show off all his achievements. We have got to be aware of ourselves and our own parameters, but also when we're looking at the men and women that are in our teams, our peers, our staff, our bosses, we need to be aware of how they may communicate and what may be different. So that visibility isn't just for me to do podcasts, it's for how we receive those and how we listen to those challenges and then how we learn from them. And celebrating it is about really listening and hearing to others around you. So I know I've kind of gone round the houses with that answer, but I really want people to stop and think. The stats that we have shared today, that's real stuff that it is getting ignored right now. And I understand why, but we all need to switch on our brains and say, actually, it's not an over there fix, it's a right here fix. And there's one program that I just want to end on with that I've been running that has been a phenomenal success. Here in the UK, across all technology roles, only 19% of them, as of January this year, are filled by women. So we know we have a 1 in 5 deficit. We know we've got a gross gender imbalance. I started a program in 2020 to give better visibility of these women when they're looking for work, because all the mathematicians out there will know if you put out a vacancy and you say, I want to have better visibility of women, but there's only 1 in 5 out there that can do the job, how can we show, the dreaded word quotas, as you said, Amber? So what I've tried to do is I've tried to level the playing field and give women opportunities when they're looking, not when you're looking to fill your box for someone to fit into, but when they're looking to grow and talk about their growth. When I first started this program, I called it the 17% list, because in 2020, it was only 17%. And what really shocked me was all the way back to 2013, it had always been 17%, because we cannot retain our women. So it's so important when we talk about visibility and we talk about action, this isn't somebody else to fix. It's all of us to be vigilant at all times. Yes, celebration, yes, amplification, but also parity and just general fairness. Don't let a woman be spoken over again in a meeting. When you remember that somebody else brought up the notion, it's that person's notion. Just because she's not in the pub at 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock every night doesn't mean she's not contributing to the business and shouldn't be thought of first. I could go on and on. That's just some of the stuff that I wanted to say around action.
Love that. Thank you, Nadia. And it was great to hear how from the conversation around women in fintech, so many other aspects came out of it. And this became just one small piece of a huge puzzle when it comes to inclusion, to confidence, to companies' cultures. So thanks again. I'm aware that our session is coming to an end, but before we wrap it up, I would love to get from each one of you maybe a piece of advice to women who are about to start out their careers or are currently applying and in the tech space. What will be your key takeaway from your experience and a key advice for them to just celebrate their own success and walk the talk, as Nadia says?
Cool. Is it okay if I go first, because I actually have a workshop in 2 minutes? I guess my piece of advice is, I probably have 2 pieces of advice, one or 3, but they're under the same kind of umbrella term. So, and you can see I'm like recording it so I can put it on later. The first is, it's never a no, it's just a not right now. I don't believe in the word no. If anyone knows me, you know I don't believe in the word no, because there is no such thing as a no. Something can't be that definitive. If it's a not right now, take a step back and think, why is it a not right now? Is it not right now because of something that you can go and do and improve? Or is it not right now because the company and the organization is just not for you? And then you have to look outside. The second is, you are the superpower and you have the skills within you. And we just need to reframe that conversation. I think Nadia spoke about communication skills and Amber also spoke about the representation point. At the end of the day, you have your skills, right? You know your strengths. If you just massage them as a muscle and you grow on them and you strengthen them and you think about what you actually enjoy doing, that's where you can thrive and where you can strive. there's this really terrible notion in fintech and women in tech being like, you're not technical enough. Okay, but I never wanted to be technical. I'm not technical. People that are technical are way better than I am. So I'm not trying to discount their effort either. And one of the reasons why I think I wasn't comfortable in the world of tech is every time I was boosting up my communication skills, which I can do, I can go and talk in front of 1,200 people. I go to a CFO and tell him how to financially kind of better support his company. I have no issue standing in front of C-suite and letting my confidence talk on behalf of me. Managers were always like, well, Sonia, you're not technical enough. Okay, but I didn't do coding or computer science. That's not the route that I wanted to go down. And for a while, I let their views of me become my reality, which isn't fair, which wasn't fair. So your skills, your strengths, really tone down on them and just, massage them in growth. And I think the last piece of advice that I would give is, and this comes from my TED talk, failure comes before resilience, is failure is a temporary disruptor. It is. Failure just means you've tried, you're learning something, you're growing from that journey. Think about what you've done, what you've learned, what you've done well, do that again and think about what hasn't worked and move on. I think companies present this really well. A lot of companies are not profitable. They haven't got world-leading products. They're still going and moving on. So they wrap up failure as evolution and upgrades and innovation. As people, especially as women, we're like, oh, failure means we've made a mistake and we're terrible. No, it's not. It just means that you've tried, you've given it a go, you're innovating yourself, you're moving on. And that disruptor element is, it's the same as if you were going to go for a dinner on a Friday, point A to B, and the tube doesn't work or the Uber's not coming. It's not going to stop you from going out. You're just going to find a different route. That fundamentally what it is, failure is just another route to get to your same destination or another destination that you didn't even think you wanted to go down. Like I've gone from being a woman in tech to a radio presenter, right? If anyone could have told me I would have done that, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. I'm going to got this ladder that was made for me. But there's no such thing as a straight ladder. Like you have to pivot and you have to kind of squiggle along. So those are my three, right? So really it's never no, it's just a not right now. Your skills and strengths are your superpower and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And try everything, fail fast, fail kind, but think of it as a learning experience.
Amazing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nadia. I know you have another workshop, so good luck with that. And thanks for sharing those tips and very powerful points. Amber, do you have any?
Sure. Yeah, real quickly, I would say, based on my previous experience, and if I had to tell my younger self anything, I would say just go boldly. Whether or not you feel bold, go boldly. As women, chances are that even if you're going boldly, you're probably under indexing. So that's the advice that I would give to myself and that I give to young women is go boldly. And everything else, we're in a big market experiment anyway. You'll figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, but this is definitely something that I would tell my younger self is to go boldly into your career in fintech.
Brilliant. And Nadia?
So I love everything that's been said so far. I definitely want to echo that. And then I'd probably say to take it all to the next level, find your allies and advocates. It's not all about, you being that, I hate the phrase superwoman, because no one is. Like, let's use the support that is available around you. I'm a massive believer in getting yourself out to networking events and building relationships and doing that proverbial LinkedIn tap to introduce yourself to people that you haven't worked with before, you haven't met before, but you're interested in the stuff that they do, because you can learn from people, they can share your aspirations, and having someone vouch for you, having someone put your name forward, have someone say your name, give you a chance. This is really, really going to help when you're wanting to celebrate your own achievements and push forward your career. And it's something that comes very naturally to a lot of men. So I'd love to see more women do this as well.
True, 100%. Thank you, Nadia. And before we close off, I remember, Amber, you had a question. You said before you wanted to take the opportunity to ask a question. If you want, please feel free.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have been kicked out of my meeting room, so I'm just standing in the hallway, which is why my camera's not off, but I'm still here. Yes, Nadia, I loved what you said about, confidence, the perception of confidence in women being a societal problem. So one of the notes that I wrote down as a closing is, I would like to see companies and society at large actually deliver messages explicitly and subtly to women that women and their natural abilities, whatever they inherently do well, and whatever that happens to be, whether it's technical, comms, whatever it is what is needed and required. Off the back of all of those stats that we talked about and referenced, I'm not saying that we don't all have things to learn, points to improve, and that every woman could do everything, to your point about being superwoman. But what we've heard for a really long time is that women must be the ones to adapt themselves to a dominant culture, whatever that is. In financial services, it's particular, and in tech, it's particular, and to a large extent, FinTech as well. So what I would love to know from you is just, if you had to give, especially smaller companies, it's, we could get into a debate about how difficult or hard it is to change culture within larger organizations, or, the threshold in terms of company size at which it's more difficult to change culture, or maybe longer. So again, I work in smaller SMEs, and I feel like there's a real opportunity in these smaller organizations to change culture quickly to be more inclusive. So are there a couple points that you would give to this size of a company, companies that have, I don't know, started out in the last 3 to 5 years, that are, I'd say 50 people or below, 50 employees or below, that they really need to watch out for, something that they could do today, implement, whether it's a culture change or something to be aware of? What kind of advice would you give to these particular companies?
Yeah, and great question, because I think there's just so many companies out there who are about to embark on scale up at this size, and they're thinking, right, how can we take, they've probably got their product and their growth plans down. They know what they want to do, but they haven't quite got it on the people side. And that's the real conundrum at the moment. So what I'll tell you is the things that I have seen that are really working at this size. So I have had a number of businesses approach me, sometimes all male boards, and they say, right, Nadia, we know that we have groupthink here. We know that we're not stress testing our product enough. We know that we are not, just by proxy, by the pure fact that we are of similar demographic, of similar age group, of similar ethnicity, that we are going to look at a problem, probably, if this was the pie chart, probably just from this angle, and we need to enhance our diversity of thought, and we want to work with you to be able to attract people from different backgrounds to the business. And at that size and that stage, it's really, really easy to be able to work with actually one of the concepts that I bring in around the 19% list, which is role creation. So actually, you're not saying I need a CFO that can do this, 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 and this, but instead I need somebody who can help us mold our finance division and actually that person grow into being a CFO based on the skills that they have right now. And this is a really, really nice way of starting to make some and actually feeling some big impact and having not just a seat at the table, but a voice at the table and a voice at the decision-making table. This is something that works really nicely. Another thing, and none of these things are just one thing on their own. Everything needs a proper support structure. Another thing is at this stage, implementing a proper DEI committee, where you're not just sending a survey out and closing your eyes and then everyone just says, yeah, everything's great, so you believe that it is, but instead having quangos, having conversations, having small meeting groups of, do we have psychological safety in this business? Do we set people up so that they're going to step out of their comfort zone? When I say people, I mean all people, because this takes me back to the why. Why are young girls more risk averse compared to young boys at school age? Why is that? Because we tell them that they're perfect, and we tell boys, go on, you can go and break things down the hallway. I know I'm simplifying a lot of this, but if we genuinely want to build psychologically safe environments, we need to and have people feel that they can take more risks and give things a try. And as Sonia said, fail fast. We need to showcase that we can do that, and actually we encourage that. And more importantly, we will have your back if you do fail fast. You won't have any ramifications of losing your job or not getting the next promotion. In fact, we want you to mess something up because you're trying something new. this all comes out of a properly set up DEI committee. Another thing that works really, really well is introducing at this stage a bias champion, because as I said, inclusion is about including everybody and everyone having their eyes on it, their ears open to it, or whatever senses that they use to communicate, all switched on so that they can identify when bias has taken place. But more importantly, that we are not leaving the problems or leaving the discrimination to the marginalized to fight. That's just the worst strategy ever. But instead, that we are empowering the witnesses to say, wait a second, that wasn't right. How are we ever going to be building an inclusive culture if I've witnessed that? But more importantly, empower the witnesses to go and speak to a champion, a bias champion, who has the say-so to drive change within the business, and get that not just as a top down, but a bottom up as well. So there's really clear communication up and down. But one of my biggest programs, which I spoke to you about earlier, my 19% list, this is slowly but surely changing everybody's perception, because here in the UK in particular, every time I'm working with a company, they love to tell me that women just don't exist in these roles. And I say, what roles? Development roles. Well, we place developers. Cybersecurity roles. Well, we place cybersecurity individuals. You know, we are placing lots of women into the industry and within the industry. And actually, it's sort of breaking down these barriers of perception. And my final point is around this perception. We have a perception within the industry, but also there's a perception of us from outside the industry that isn't pretty. So it's super important that we are all getting involved with telling everybody, telling our friends, telling our family, what are we doing to make our environment super accessible and a safe space so that people can thrive within it. Because slowly but surely, we will change the perception of this space by doing and by action. And when I say that's why we need to walk the talk, it's by doing each and every one of these things. So I hope that's given you the answer that you were looking for, Amber.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, it was great. Thank you, you both. It was amazing to listen what you guys are working on, what comes next, what the industry collectively can focus on. Thanks to Sonia as well. She left a great contribution from her end as well. And yes, it's been a pleasure. And I truly hope next time we meet, we will talk about something else, because the industry has moved forward. But thank you a lot. And yes, enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, ladies, and it was a power-packed 1 hour session. And thank you, Ms. Gaia, for wonderfully moderating the session. And thank you all.